Sijui, by this sijui. I think you bridge to Taikrosa zile tumefika hapo. But nilimconsult juzi tu chini ya maji. Nikamwambia by the way unaweza kadredi, akaniambia hapana. Sema wow. At least hatuna Samson hapa mtaani.
Karibu Boni.
Asante sana.
And tuko live pale Facebook in case you want to see Boni, and of course follow us online. Tuko live Facebook at Top FM Live, pia tuko live pale YouTube at Top FM Live, na Twitter pia at Top FM Live. Boni, leo nimeuliza watu, tumefika November, tunamaliza November, nimeuliza watu what they are thankful for. And you know, some are writing in wako at their lowest but they are thankful. Wengine wanasema you know for life and stuff. And before even get to the conversation of the day, mimi napendaga kuuliza pia come through, you know, Boni, 11 months zimeisha. Hii mwezi, what are you thankful for? Like, what has the Lord done for you?
I think one of the things that I'm very thankful for, this has been the year where my spiritual life has been at its best. And I try to make that a reality every year, where I say, I will make this my best year spiritually. So that has been an amazing highlight for me, just being able to grow with in my walk of faith. The second thing that I'm very grateful for is that I have an amazing relationship with my wife. I think one of the things that makes me happy, unajua kuna kitu poa kama kuwa na mta yenye unafurahingi ukirudi home jioni. So just the fact that I am happy to go back home when I do, that's something I'm very grateful for, because I know having a good relationship is not, you know, it's not the everyday ordinary. It is something that it takes the intervention of God, the grace of God. I think lastly, I'm very grateful for my kids. I have 3 very amazing kids. My firstborn, Jeremy, my secondborn, Jaden, my thirdborn, Jewel. I am very grateful for them, because they give me a reason to push hard every day. Wow. And I work very hard.
I saw one graduated the other day.
Yeah, wananipatia reason ya. Kwanza naenda high school, so lazima nifanye bidii sana.
So kuna bazenga.
Niko na bazenga, tunagurumanga wanaume wawili kwa hiyo hao.
Ulimpa ile speech, watu wanapenda kuambia vijana wakitoka initiation. Ambia sasa, hii nyumba tuko wazee wawili.
Kwa wazee wawili. You know, incidentally, when my son became a teen and then he broke his voice, kumoja nimekaa mtaani, unajua ile kabla uingie kwa hao, kwa hapo kwa mlango unasikia base huko ndani, unashindwa hii story gani, which other man is invading my territory? Then I opened the door and I saw it was my own son.
Kuna ile asubuhi ananga hiyo sauti jioni yako nayo.
Yes. So I'm very grateful for family. And lastly, I'm grateful for the opportunities God has given me to serve him. There are few things that make me happier than serving God. I feel like when you serve God, there is something you touch in the most deepest part of your being. There's something that is awakened that really makes me happy. I've gotten to go to different places, speak to different people, and that has made me very happy. So I'm an incredibly fulfilled man.
And I'm also thankful for you.
Yes.
I'm thankful for you coming here.
And thank you for tolerating my a lot of my words here and there.
Mimi ndio niko nasema asante bana. You've been very instrumental. You know, nowadays I talk to young guys and wanaanza kuona kuna wisdom fulani niko nayo.
The hair is not for nothing. There is wisdom. Akili ni nywele.
Kuna wisdom. Alafu nikiendaga nyumbani nasikia nikaa tu nimerudia tu Boni uniambia. So asante sana.
Asante.
Wow.
Asante.
And Nancy from Baringo unasema God's love, mercy and favor and grace amekutendea mambo mob sana. We glorify him together with you. And unasema even if he doesn't give me, I will still have faith in him. Wewe anaitwa Antonina Harrison. What an attitude to have. Boni, we are talking about relationships reboot.
Yes.
What are we talking about today?
So I don't know whether ushaikuwa na time, maybe phone yako ilikuwa imehang or machine yako ya computer ilikuwa imehang, and then you go through this process of restarting it so that you refresh the operating system. As we go through life, many things happen in relationships. Sometimes unapata kuna vitu zili happen, some relationships didn't go as you expected. There are certain things that didn't work out as you had hoped they would work out. And there comes a time when, if you're not careful, you can get to a place that scripture warns about, which is called the hardening of the heart. God hakutu create tukue na the hardened heart. God alitaka tukue in and through our lives. We have a heart that is soft, that is malleable. But kuna vitu mse upitia kwa relationships unapata manzo umeanza ku harden heart. Na uki harden heart inamaanisha operating system ya relationships zako inaanza kuwa corrupted. And so utaanza kufind there are struggles that are coming because your heart is not it's hardening up. So when we are talking about rebooting our relationships, we are talking about taking our heart back to the place where we can function as God would want us to function in our relationships. Ni kama ile unasikiaga saa ingine simu yako inakwambia restore back to factory settings. Hiyo ndio tunasema. So there are many times in our lives when we have to take our heart back there. And if we don't, unafindingi relationships zako zimeanza kuwa mechanical. Sijui ushaisikia watu wanaishingi kwa family, wameanza kuishi ka brother na sister, na ni husband na wife. Or unafind just even the relationships around you, unataking your say for granted, you casualize them, and then saa zile unasikia maybe msia mededi, ndio unaanza kustuka, you know, I wish I had. To prevent you from getting to that place of I wish I had, you must keep rebooting your system. And what does it mean to reboot your system? Kuirudisha factory settings. Kujiuliza factory settings zenye God alitaka kwa relationships ni gani, and taking your heart back there. And that's not something that you do once, it is something you do continually. That's why scripture inaongeaga about being transformed by the renewing. There's a rebooting that you must keep doing for your relationships to remain fresh. Relationships ni kama skuma. Ukiziacha bila kuzieka kwa maji ama kuzieka kwa fridge, they go stale. And that is not the will of God. So you have to keep rebooting so that now you are in a certain frequency. Nimelike hiyo word umetumia. Frequency, yeah? Frequency inamaanisha there's a certain quality people receive in terms of the signal of what you broadcast. Even in relationships, if you don't reboot, you'll start giving people a wrong signal. Na wasi wataanza kukuvumilia. Ushaiona mse mwenye manze maisha imemgonga na akakubali kukaa in that state, maka kikam around you unasikia manze unamvumilia because it's complain after complain, they are grumbling, they are complaining, they have negative energy, they have a hardened heart, they have a wrong perception. So unaweza fika hiyo place. And I've seen a lot of people who get to that place. And if you get to that place, your life itakuwa one sad journey. Lazima ujifundishe kureboot. That's why hata gari inapelekangwa service. Kwa sababu kishaenda a certain mileage, kuna vitu zimechapa ndani ya hiyo fridge, hiyo whatever engine ya hiyo gari. So if you don't do the servicing, that car cannot serve you for long. But if you service it in certain intermediate frequencies, utafind ina kuserve for long. That's the same way relationships work. If you reservice your heart, you reboot your heart, you refresh your relationship frameworks, utafind you enjoy relationships. Relationships don't become stale. And that's what we are talking about.
What relationships are we rebooting?
All relationships. There is no relationship that you don't need to reboot, including your relationship with God. Because unapatanga, I don't know whether ushaikuwa in a certain space in your spiritual life, unafind manze huko tu yani, unajua una get hata relationship yako na God haina joy fulani, haina passion fulani,
kama mmezoeana.
Unajua hata prayers zako ni mechanical. There is no passion in your prayers, and that's why people are told, ukiangalia hata life ya Christ, Bible inasema in certain times he would retreat from the crowd so that aweze kureboot system yake. And that's usually what happens because life inakuanga na wear and tear. And anything that has wear and tear needs maintenance. And that maintenance is what we are saying. We are rebooting ourselves. We are rebooting our walk with God. And by the way, even spiritually, what a better time during the year to reboot spiritually. So that by the time 2024 ina come, auanzi na, you know, a certain wrong disposition. Unaanza ukiwa spiritually alert, uko spiritually robust, life yako iko mali nafaa kuwa. That's why you need to take certain times where you isolate from other people so that you can work on those things that make your relationships to work. So at a relationship, I'm saying a God ufika hiyo place. Ukiangalia story ya David, kuna time manze unaona zile prayers anapray kwa Psalms, una realize umse yako rebooting mode, you know. Unasikia anasema, oh God, you forsaken me. So he's in a certain place where he's not enjoying his relationship with God. So every relationship gets depleted, and that's why we have to replenish. Even marriage. Mnaweza ka design fulani upate mmezoeana mpaka mnaishingi tu pamoja kulipa mabills na kulea watoi.
Unaitana oya.
Yes, so unasikia hata unaitwa baba nani. Baba, you know, and those are some of the things we are saying. If we are not careful, we end up sliding down a road that hardens us, and then tunakuwa tuko tu. And that's a very bad way of living life. It is against what John 10:10 says. John 10:10 inasema Christ came that we may have life and life in abundance. Ukisoma Amplified inasema life to the full until it overflows. That God anataka ukuwe na a certain life mpaka wasi wenye wana relating na wewe wana feeling privilege because you keep rebooting yourself and re-energizing yourself by the grace of God so that you can be able to be a resource to your relationships.
Boni,
Yes.
kuna mtu anasikia hii conversation anasema very important, very important.
Yes.
How do you know
Yes.
that you need to reboot?
Yes.
Ni vitu gani hapo around zenye zinafaa kukua zinakuwa weekends zinasema we hapa nafaa kwenda service.
So several things I'm going to say. Number one, ukifind umefika place where strife has become normal in your relationships. Ulishazoeanga tu kukaa in an antagonistic mode, right? Unajamingi haraka, una hit the roof haraka, you become irritable. It is a sign that you actually need to stop and begin to ask yourself some questions about where your heart is, where your soul is, where your person is, so that now those begin to be indicators that you're not doing well. So number one, nimesema, if you find that you are in a continuous state of strife with people, unafikaga tu home umejamba kwa kifungua mlango, upate na cut hapo kwa mlango, unaipiga buti na cut ija kuduia anything. Unaget? So una find that you're emitting negative energy instead of emitting life. Life is a function of how we recalibrate ourselves to make sure that tuna emit energy yenye ni positive around us. But ukifind that even when people come around you wanaanza kukuvumilia, wanakutolerate because you are full of strife, that's a sign that you need to reboot. Another thing that shows that you need to reboot is that you are ever complaining. Hakuna kitu poa unaonaga. Nikikam kwa show nasema na manze Karis leo ameangusha hiyo show. Na maybe somebody is thinking, wow, Karis today was at his best. So if you find yourself being overly critical, overly negative about the things that are around you, that hakuna kitu hata moja unaonaga unasema, wow, that's amazing. Hata ukipata ile flower yenye ni beautiful ikiwa na nyuki hapo unasema hii flower ilikuwa poa lakini nyuki imeharibu.
Unapatanga kuna bat mahali.
Yes. So ukipawa a big white paper with a black dot, wewe uangalie the whiteness of the paper, unaangalia the black dot. That also shows you that you are in a place where you need to reboot. Your system is not in the place where it needs to be, right? The other thing that again, this is a very big sign that you need to reboot. You don't have peace and joy. Wewe unangojaga vitu zingine zikumake happy. You don't know how to be joyful by yourself. So that for you, you depend on somebody, you depend on events, una depend na do. Saa zile uko na do ndio una walk with a spring in your step. Saa zile umesota manzi hata neck iko chini, sura imeangalia chini. So just that reality of, are you walking in joy? Are you walking in peace? Because joy and peace are an indicator that your operating system iko mahali inafaa kuwa. So that haukasirikangi haraka. You know, that's one of the qualities about God. Bible inasema he is slow to anger. Part of what tells you that you're in a good place in terms of your relationships is that you're slow to anger. Even when something is very provocative, kabla ukasirike, somebody has to really work hard to make you angry. So if you find that you're lacking joy, you're lacking peace, and then lastly, and this is important, that you're full of fear and you're full of anxiety because sasa insecurities zako zimeanza kukubongesha. Maybe uko na girlfriend or uko na boyfriend, akikaja kukall ushaanza kuwa na matension, ushaanza kushika nari. You get? That is a sign that your operating system in your relationships needs to be rebooted. And by the way, there are several things that I'm going to mention this as we go along. And the one thing that helps us to reboot is how close we try to be with God. Ukiwa karibu na God anakushuingi, hii area una need ku reboot. Hii area una need ku step up. Hii area una need ku adjust, right? So one of the reasons why we become hardened is when we slide away from God. And that's what I'm finding Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. In other words, ukireboot passion yako ya God, the other things, God is able to show you how to realign them so that they follow the divine pattern and the divine order that God alikuwa ameordain.
Nice one.
Yes.
Sincerely speaking, vile umezi-mention,
Yes.
kuna relationship mahali hata mimi nafaa
Umerealize
kuanza
unaenda
kureboot.
kureboot,
Inanipea tu stress.
Yes.
Na haifai kunipatia stress.
No.
Nitaangalia huo bazengo wa mind.
Ndio hiyo sasa.
Nataka sasa nikirudi niambie vile nitaanza kureboot.
Sawa.
Hapo ndo naona hata some few people writing hapo wanaosema how do we reboot.
Yes. Okay.
Shajara ya biashara na Dolly Mwirigi.
Hujambo, shirika la ndege nchini
Makoma. Bonnie, this one is for you, bana.
Old school.
Yeah. You know, when these songs were coming out, ulikuwa na nywele.
I'm telling you, nilikuwa na afro kayo yako. Wewe unajua umeanza kuzeeka budi. But it's wonderful memories.
It's nice song. So Boni, kwanza nimepata winners hapa.
Yes.
Unajua wakati niliambia watu waeke slash,
Yes.
ndio watu waligundua amenitumia bila slash. So any message wengi hapa saa 9 kuendelea. Hiyo nimewapea leakage. Watu walikuwa wanaingia to praise atmosphere hivyo. So I have 2 people here I want to give the tickets, and I'm actually happy that people have remembered all that information. So nilienda wale walituma mapema kabisa, jua wengine wanaweza kimbia huko kwa sites zingine kutafuta. Ka wisdom kidogo. So kuna huyu ana brother anaitwa Silas hapa. Sijui alitaka Sila ama Silas. Huyu nimempatia tiko. Amesema payment ya kwanza M-Pesa pay bill ni 8008575 account praise, alafu payment ya pili iko sawa. Nikaenda kwa 20933 nimepata huyu anaitwa Grace Neema, pia wamewin. Mbona unaweza taka kuleta mama kwa event?
Naweza taka kumleta like yesterday. Jo wife yangu penda sana praise and worship.
Anapenda praise and worship. Sasa tahakikisha mmepata very good seat kwa praise atmosphere. Leo mimi ni mtu mzuri leo. So Boni, wewe na mama mjipange tarehe 9. Ticket mimi nitawapatia mwenyewe. This is how it feels to.
I'll tell you. Nikimchapia news itambamba mbaya.
Umpige surprise. Before then pia nitataka kupatia mtu mwenye anniversary yake kwa hiyo day. Unajua maboy wanashindwa ku surprise watu yao. Maybe inaweza kuwa surprise mzuri. Niko naona kama kuna ticket kadhaa naweza patia mtu, nitauliza hiyo swali siku nyingine. So Boni, people are asking here. Kwanza kuna huyu anaandika hapa. Anasema very good topic. Unasema please explain who to reboot relationships, being close with God, anything else, how to reboot, na hapo ndio tunaenda. Kuna wale wamesema amazing topic, what should I do during rebooting my relationship with my wife? I think anauliza how to reboot. Alafu anasema how do you handle a wife who has negative energy, complaining all the time, she doesn't see anything good in her life. Kama hapo tunaweza kujibu. Alafu so Boni, I think people are asking us here how to reboot, and I also want to know how do I reboot. We also back on our social media pages, Hope FM Live. If you have a question, you can always drop it there.
So rebooting, and I'm going to use a very familiar passage of scripture. In fact, anytime I have spoken about rebooting, there is no better passage that talks about rebooting than Psalms 23. A psalm we all know too well, lakini mara mingi siyo hata vitu God amesema ndani hiyo psalm. And I want to just read what it says here. This is Psalms 23. Natatu nisome, and then we'll pick out the principles of rebooting zenye God ameweka ndani ya hiyo word yake. Bible inasema hivi katika Psalms 23:1, the Lord is my shepherd, to feed, to guide and shield me, I shall not lack. Number 2, he makes me lie down in fresh, tender green pastures. He leads me beside still and restful waters. He refreshes and restores my life. He leads me in paths of righteousness, uprightness and right standing with him, not for my earning, but for his namesake. Na nataka niachi hapo. Because just those 3 verses have such a truckload ya wisdom yenye God anasemanga tutumie when we need to reboot ourselves, when we need to reboot our relationships, when we need to reboot our lives, right? So the first thing that una realize is you must accept to follow. You cannot reboot, and that's what I call the principle of recharge, that you must allow yourself to realize that you cannot recharge yourself, you cannot reboot yourself. You need somebody mwenye ataku reboot. And ukisha realize, you know, it's like when you're charging a phone ikikuwa imeisha moto, and you actually feel you need to use that phone, kuna M-Pesa una need to withdraw, kuna call una need to make, what's the first thing you do? Unatafutanga mali kuna power source, socket, and then una connect simu yako kwa charger na una connect kwa hiyo socket. This is the thing about rebooting any relationship in life. It begins by plugging into God. Ukianza na plugging into God, now the system of the phone comes alive. Your relationships will receive new life when you connect deeper with God. Ukiangalia story ya David alikuwa na boss, alikuwa namhemesha sana, alikuwa anaitwa Saul. And I think this will speak to the person mwenye amesema, probably you have a person you're relating with mwenye uleta negative energy. David alikuwa na sonko mwenye every day was negative energy. And this is the same David that writes this psalm that says, you know what? The Lord is my shepherd. So the number one way to reboot is to reconnect with God. And whatever that looks like for you, it may mean taking some time out to just worship God. It may mean repenting of certain things that you realize zenye zimekripin kwa life yako, zinaanza kuharden heart yako. It may mean taking some time to read the word and asking God to speak to you. It may mean taking some time and looking for somebody who is in a further, in a deeper relationship with God and asking them to journey with you and to pray with you and to walk with you. Whatever you need to do to reconnect with God will begin to reboot your relationships. Nimerealize kitu interesting sana. Hata saa zile nimejam na msee fulani, pengine hata ni Weman Karis umenijamisha ama msee mwingine amenijamisha. There is one thing I've always realized. If I go to my chamber of prayer and pray about that issue and pray for that person, the negative energy that I had towards that person dies down. Why? Reconnect na God ameanza kureboot system yako. So it begins there. The Lord is my shepherd. Accepting to be shepherded. Connecting back to the power source. Connecting back to the factory that is supposed to help you to reset your factory settings. Ndio zuri mali zinafaa kuwa.
Unanikumbusha
yes,
piece fulani niliperform kitambo.
Yes.
Ilikuwa inaitwa plugin, nilikuwa nimeita plugin. Nilikuwa nasema plugin to the power source.
Yes.
Akona million plugins. So plugin.
Yeah.
Power source so sana kushinda powers za so saras.
Yes. Hiyo lyrics hapo zimeweza. Spoken word hapo mara nyingi.
Ilikuwa ni kweli
yakona
ni power source so sana. Even you're talking about rebooting.
Yes.
Wow.
So after you reconnect with God, this is something that God always does to reboot our systems, to recalibrate our inner man so that our relationships are healthier. Number 2, review your emotions. Once you reconnect with God, review your emotions. Because the moment unaanza review your emotions, you start realizing things that God anataka uachane nazo. For example, ureview kama umekuwa ukifeel umejam, ama una feel uko anxious, ama una feel uko afraid, ama una feel uko jealous, ama una feel una need to revenge. Just review that emotion in light of your walk with God and begin to process it in a very spiritual way as you ask yourself, is this an emotion that is draining me, or is it an emotion that is replenishing me? Right? Because anytime the enemy anataka to drain, anafanyanga to tolerate negative emotions. Unapata kuna mse umebeba, kuna mse uko na hasira nae. And one of the things we must do as Christians, if we want to have healthy relationships, we must keep reviewing our emotional state. Ukiangalia pale Galatians chapter 5, after yongea about the fruit of the Spirit, inaenda hapo after inaongea about things that you need to check that you should not have in your life. For example, inaongea about anger, inaongea about, indignation, fear, hizo vitu zote, jealousy. So it begins inviting us to a place where we review our emotions and we begin to replace negative emotions with positive thoughts. Now notice, we are not changing negative emotions to positive emotions. We are just saying, this is the emotion I'm feeling that is negative, enye inafanya nisi recharge, and then now you replace it with a positive thought. Philippians 4 inasema hivi, whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is lovely, whatever is of a good report, think on these things. Wow. God anatuambia nini? Ukitaka recharge life yako, don't work on changing your emotions. Work on changing your thoughts. Because your thoughts are the leaders of your emotions.
Wow.
Right?
So kama naonanga
Yes.
kitu inaleta strife ama
Yes,
inafanyanga
yes.
tunagombana sana na mtu.
Yes.
Kwa hii season yenye nataka kureboot.
Yes. Yes.
By changing my mindset,
Yes.
my thoughts,
Yes.
ninaanza kuangalia the other
Yes.
side ya si like to your feed this strife.
Negative emotion. Yes.
Unaanza kuona okay, naweza fanya hivi pia.
Yes.
Si tu na receive kukosewa na pia mimi naweza retaliate hivi in this manner. Wow.
Yes.
I think what you're also calling us is maybe when you're thinking about rebooting is we are thinking we are the right one, so we need to reboot for the sake of the other people.
Yes.
But it's also it's actually for us.
Absolutely.
It starts with it's
when you
for
reboot, you're the greatest winner. And by the way, there are 4 things you also need to assess as you assess your emotions. You need to assess, are my emotions based on ignorance? Ushaipata saa ingine umecatch against a certain person and then juni kuna information hukuwa nayo. Saa zile umepatia information unasema, wa, na nilikuwa nimejamia umsi. So there are times our emotions are negative because of an ignorance that we have. And that's why one of the things I keep telling people, you cannot reboot your relationships when you're ignorant. You must get into a process of learning and wanting to understand the other people, yourself, and your walk with God. So ignorance is at the root of negative emotions that drain us. Okay? So unapata kuna ignorance uko nayo. So are your emotions based on ignorance? And if they are, which positive thoughts do you need to undertake so that utoke your place ya ignorance, right? Number 2, there are negative emotions that are based on insecurity. Insecurity. Umekuwa tu na insecurity fulani ndani yako, so imekufanya ukakuwa in a certain emotional state. All right? And because of that emotional state, una find a certain relationship inakuchokesha. You remember like the story of Job when he's going through a lot of problems, then mabesi zake wana try kumu-advise. One, they are advising him out of ignorance. Hawajui hata history yote vile inaenda. Wanafikiria wanajua, so wanakama, mse, manzi, kwani umesi nama niaje? You know? So you find that there is ignorance, there is insecurity. And by the way, ignorance na insecurity are signs that your walk with God haijakuwa ikiendelea poa. Because the more you know God, the more God will challenge you to confront your ignorance. Hosea 4:6 inasema, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So kuna ignorance, kuna insecurity. Ukiangalia noma yenye Saul alikuwa nayo, noma ya Saul haikuwa David. Noma ya Saul ilikuwa insecurities zake. Anaona manzi, huyu jamaa amekam, throne side itaenda. So his insecurities were draining him, and the only way for him to reboot haikuwa kuwa David.
Ni kurealize ako insecure.
Ni kurealize manzi ame insecure.
Na
ni kudeal na insecurity. Okay? Right? So if you don't deal with the insecurity, unaanza kuwa na negative energy towards wasi wenye God ameordain hata wakuwe blessing kwako. Right? So insecurity is a dangerous thing that feeds negative emotions na inafanyanga tukose kureboot. Number 3 is another thing also that causes us to be to lack that ability to reboot. Inaitwa immaturity. Umekata tu kugrow. There are certain things, and I don't know whether you've realized this, man Karis. I know you've been married for a while now. Utapata kuna vitu zilikuwa zinakujamisha mwaka yenyu ya kwanza, lakini saa hizi kujamishangi. You know why? Because umegrow.
Mimi kwanza nilikuwa mature sana.
Yes. So una find
nimewahi zua.
Yes. Ukazua, and then sahi unaangalia yako unashindwa na by the way alikuwa anazua.
Nimewahi zua juu ya Kiroma juu.
Yes.
Sikufurahia vile imekokomeza.
Yes. Unacheki.
Full. Hiyo si maturity mazeni. Mfala.
By the way, immaturity and foolishness usually go together.
Ni mfala. Sasa ingine nakumbusha yako nasikia kulia.
Unasikia manzi.
Nasikia kwa ni mimi niliangukaje hapa hivi.
Yes.
But coming to a place where nyapa pia nakubali hapa nilikuwa nilifanya ufala.
And by the way, pia wacha ni encourage parents when you wanna raise teenagers. One of the things you will realize as you're raising teenagers is that kuna certain immaturities wako nazo, and what you need to do is not to bash them for the immaturities, is to just give them space to grow. Because msea kisha grow, kuna vitu hata ona, manze, I was doing this, I was doing that. So when you don't confront your immaturity, you carry negative energy. Na negative energy inafanyanga ushindo kureboot. Because to the extent that you have that negative energy, then you're not able to operate with maturity.
The thing about negativity, Boni, mimi unikatsia sana na mimi jaribu sana kudeal nayo.
Yes.
It's a continuous flow of like it continuously feeds
Absolutely,
you.
absolutely.
Like mali inatoka haiwachi kukufeed.
Yes.
Unamaliza
Ni kama
na
ocean.
hii kutu inakufeed na vitu mbaya inakufeed. You know, haikufeed asubuhi alafu you take a break.
Yes,
so if that is what is in somebody's head,
Absolutely.
it doesn't stop until you do what Bonnie is saying.
And you know what happens also, Mankari, is it does not help you to be negative. One of the things I keep telling people is that when you're negative, you are the greatest loser because of your negativity. And part of what spirituality does, spirituality gives you the ability to rise above negativity. Right? I usually say you cannot be spiritually intense and mentally negative. Awezi, right? So one of the things that we want to encourage people to do as you're rebooting, assess, are your emotions based on insecurity, immaturity, ignorance? Number 4, irrationality. Irrationality inamaanisha unachekio situation but unaiassess based on your own prejudices. Kama mimi saini kama niseme watoi wote wenye wanakuwaga na madredi ni marebels, ni wasee wako kwa makatels fulani, right? Because now I'm beginning to allow myself to be rational. I'm judging things based on their appearance and not based on who they are. And that's usually what happens. That sometimes ukikataa kureview emotions zako, unakuwaga na irrationality na ujui. Unajudge vitu na ufala. Right? I don't know whether you remember a time when ungeenda church na dread. Na mimi siko hapa kukampeni ya wase wa dread.
Ongea boni.
Right? But kuna time ungeenda church na dread, manzi hata ni kama wase wanakaa mbali, ni kama wewe uko na kaleprosi fulani. So people are judging you based on an appearance, but God looks beyond that. So that means that you are irrational. Na hiyo ndio mistake karibu Samuel makes. Azila alienda ku anoint king. Alienda akaletewa ma first body, right? Akaletewa mabigi, wase walikuwa wanakaa wako na muscles hapo. And God now had to rebuke him and tell him, you know what? Man looks at the outward appearance, God looks at the heart.
I feel like God ni venye tu alikuwa anatambua Samuel.
Yes. Angemchapa radi.
Alikuwa anze, I'm not like you people.
Absolutely.
But Bonnie, I know time imeenda na
yes.
We can, I will ask if we can finish this at session ingine because na feel it's very important.
It's important, yeah.
Hii irrationality unaongelea Bonnie, sadly.
Yes.
Ndio inafanya hata ku-insults.
Inakuwa hard.
Inakuwa ngumu.
That's it. Because we judge people before we know people.
And then right now as you're talking about rebooting, what I'm getting from this side is, you know what, I need to have a sit down and look at myself.
Absolutely.
Am I irrational to the point that I cannot reach a particular person? Am I this irrational to the point that I cannot extend grace to somebody who even wronged me? I feel like also in our walk, you might be thinking every relationship is right.
Absolutely.
But even it affects sana. The main call that we are sent to do, to win souls, you know, to evangelize.
It affects all our relationships. When you are prejudiced, you will never reboot anything, including your own calling. Prejudice ni kitu mbaya sana. Na hiyo inakuwaga, by the way, prejudice is the carnal way of looking at human beings. That's why ukiangalia Jesus, there is an episode I love, iko pale katika John chapter 4. John chapter 4 ni story ya Jesus and the Samaritan woman. Ilikuwa Jews na Samaritans, kulikuwa na prejudice, kulikuwa na irrationality, they were never interacting. But Jesus akaenda akasema, you know what? Beyond this person being a Samaritan, they are a soul. I want to understand them. I want to interact with them. And you will be surprised that some of the people you misunderstand because of your irrationality, when you just get to know them, you'll realize you've been missing an amazing blessing by not relating with them.
That's true.
So what are we saying? We are saying we have to assess, review our emotions. Are our emotions based on ignorance? Are our emotions based on immaturity, insecurity, or irrationality? Because this is how now we begin to reboot. Na tumesema, the best way to deal with negative emotions is to build positive, word-centered thoughts. Rudisha mind yako mali nafaa kuwa. Your emotions are followers to your thoughts. That's why God hajaituambia renew your emotions, anakuambia renew your mind. Kwa sababu where the mind goes, the man follows. All right? Number 3, and probably the last one that I'll say, and this is very important. So you begin by recharging your walk with God. You review your emotions. Number 3, you replenish your heart. What does it mean to replenish your heart? It means asking yourself, which attitudes do I need to develop inside me so that I can reboot? Ukiangalia sermon ya kwanza yenye Christ aliteach, Matthew chapter 5, inaitangwa the Beatitudes. Mi upenda kusema those are the attitudes to be. That's why zinaitangwa Beatitudes. Ni zile attitudes Christ anasema you need now to plant those attitudes in your heart. And that's why Jesus said all those attitudes begin with blessed are they. In other words, the moment you embrace that attitude, you reboot yourself to a certain place of blessing. Right? So look at an example. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Kuliko ushindange ukitafuta ngori, part of the way you can begin to reboot your relationships is deciding, I will not be antagonistic, I will be a peacemaker. Na wacha nikwambie, ukidecide kuwa peacemaker, there is a joy you begin to have. Mpaka unaanza kujiuliza, mbona nimekuanga nikiishi maisha yangu nikijam ovyo ovyo, najidrain, na kila time nimejam, niko tensed up. But God is just saying, one of the things you need to do is to recalibrate, replenish your heart, right? By planting the right attitudes in there. Mwaga nasema, your relationship life is not a function of who you relate with. It's a function of the attitude you carry. Kuna attitude unaweza beba, hata msi akijaribu kukujamisha, they have to work extra hard kukujamisha. Kwa sababu ya nini? You are guarding your attitude. That's why Proverbs chapter 4 sema, guard your heart with all diligence. You're replenishing your heart. And that's one of the things that David anasema kwa Psalms 23. He restores my soul. God will restore soul yako aje by inviting you to a journey where you begin to build the right attitudes in your heart. Forgiveness is one of those attitudes that una learn kuforgive say in advance hata kabla wakukatie. Unasema, we man Karis, nimekuforgive in advance. Zile makosa zote utainifanyia, nimekuforgive. Think about what that would do for your heart. It gives no room for offense. It gives no room for strife. And you become a very healthy human being. You're rebooted.
Boni.
Yes.
Thank you.
Asante.
Thank you, Mono.
Asante.
Tujamaliza hii conversation.
Yeah.
Najua nilikuwa nikupe Christmas break. Sijui tutaongea juu tunaingia season ya Christmas pia, and I know people watu washaanza safari. But I think it's very important we reboot this relationship. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you've called us to do a personal search, manze. Asante sana Boni. Hata mimi naenda ku reboot relationship fulani. Sai I'm going to make